Thank you all very much. This is my first time presenting the company, and please go easy on me. It was also really fun to experience everything last night. It was. I like weird cultures, and you definitely delivered last night. So welcome to Loudspring. That's me. I'm the communications director for Loudspring. We're an interesting company group, not the normal. We've got an interesting team. We've got an executive chairman there, Lassi Noppanen. Got our CEO with a beer in his hand. That's Bigge Lidgren from Sweden. Timo Linnanmaa, Tarja Teppo, and Antonio Galizio. And myself, we kind of form the core team at the moment. We're kind of based between Helsinki, Sweden, Lund, mostly where I am. And Antonio's in the US, in Los Angeles, where we like to keep a presence. Loudspring has invested in a lot of great companies, and they all do a lot of great things, and I'll get to them in a second. But I think it's important to, kick off anything to say that, we're not just our jobs. I'm a husband. That's me. I think I was catching my wife there in the wedding photos. I'm a father. That's my little dog. MacGyver is her name, which is kind of interesting. So she's a Cairn Terrier crossed with a fox. What is she? Jack Russell crossed with a Cairn Terrier. She's beautiful. And as was mentioned, I'm also an athlete. So I do this really interesting and funny sport called bodyboarding, which is a type of surfing, but you lay down. So that's what I do, and I compete on the world tour in that, and kind of get around survival theme. So one of the things that we do, please don't ask me to say whatever that quote is, but it's about diversification. So, we all have diversity in us, and Loudspring is also all about diversity. We've got a diversified portfolio of companies that are all connected through the same thread of saving natural resources. So, I should have picked the quote that had the English version, but I went with the Finnish one so that there was something Finnish in this presentation. So our current value drivers are here encompassed in both Swap and No-Cart. Swap is the largest online consignment store for secondhand clothing in the US at the moment. About 2 million or over 2 million unique clothing items on the platform. It's a Finnish company. Originally it started as literally a swap kind of platform where people could kind of trade garments for each other, but they kind of realized that their expertise was in logistics and actually managing the sale of things online. So they had a pivot, and they now have people sending boxes of clothes from their homes into Swap from all across America. They've got a fulfillment center just outside of Chicago, and it's like this crazy, football field size place where conveyor belts are just moving clothing around and stuff. It's really cool. They're doing really well in the US. No-Cart's one of the other kind of current value drivers for us. This is a company that has had a lot of attention in Finland. They do kind of off-grid remote energy systems. They've got this power management unit that can have any number of renewable resources plugged into it and create grid quality electricity. So they've had a lot of success in some remote areas in Africa most recently. Our strategic focus, some of you here who are, I know there's one shareholder in the room, so we used to be called Cleantech Invest, but neither of those two words, Cleantech or Invest, really described who we wanted to be in the future. So about, say 4 months ago, we changed name to Loudspring because we wanted to become a company group that saved natural resources. And these companies here are our strategic focus, you'd say, in that kind of goal and plan that trajectory we're on now. Nuka kind of brings all of the data together in a building into one place so that you can kind of find new ways to find efficiencies or improve the user experience inside a building. They've had really good growth in the last year. I believe it's something like over, it's already gone past over 1,000 buildings are using their technology. Eagle Filters is a super, one of the more bland, straightforward, I shouldn't say bland, it's really interesting. I've been spending a lot of time with them lately. They do an air intake filter for gas turbines, which basically, I didn't know this because I'm not an engineer, but the quality of the air going into a gas turbine is really important. And if your filters get clogged up, your gas turbine performs not so well, and you waste a lot of the input gas and a poorer quality result for the owner. So huge CO2 savings through them. Rescue Club, which is quite well known in Finland, and also kind of expanding into other places. Leftover food in restaurants and cafes, sell it on the app, all good. Sophie Filtration is an advanced water filtration technology which basically has a self-cleaning filter using a really trendy ultrasound technology. Blasts the particles off the filter. You don't have to replace it, save a lot of water. Then we've got a venture portfolio. We have kind of smaller stakes in these companies and also smaller input into their operational kind of what they're up to. Aurelia Turbines is an efficient gas turbine for smaller gas turbines. Wati is a kind of home energy management service that's based out of Stockholm. Oricane is energy efficient internet. Please don't ask me to describe what they do because I have no idea really, like it's quite technical. And Energize is another one of the companies that we took and had an IPO last year. They're really interesting. They do a lot of efficiency in compressed air systems in China and big manufacturing hubs. So compressed air is like super inefficient. They've got a software and expertise that can make those systems far more efficient. So businesses of all shapes and sizes. They're diversified so that when people, a lot of people, there is demand out there for a share that they can buy that represents impact. We offer that and we try to have, with this number of companies to spread the risk across the portfolio. And that's why we're unique. That's why some people love us and others don't. So what am I here to talk about today? Well, I was told not to sell it, so now we've got that out of the way. I can actually talk about what I was going to do. And it's all about impact. First of all, I brought everyone a gift each, a tote bag, which is strategically located around the room, made by this really cool company called Neutral. All, I think, 100% renewable, fair trade, ecological, approved by your grandmother. It's really good stuff. So please take one and enjoy. And I understand that there's been like a great glut of tote bags at all events lately, so pass it on to someone else if you don't need it. So I'm going to start with a piece of art, and in this presentation kind of talk about impact in relation to some really, I think, some of the most profound pieces of art in the 21st century. This one here is super interesting to me. For those who can't read the text there, it's we've got a gentleman in a ragged suit speaking to some children in a seemingly post-apocalyptic world, and he says, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. I'm glad you laugh, because I mean, it's a powerful message, and I don't think the cartoonist thought that it was going to be so perfectly played. It's quite sobering in the reality of this, because this is unfortunately the thinking in the majority of boardrooms and C-suites around the world still, that just getting shareholder value in a financial sense is all that businesses need to do in the world. And I think everyone in here agrees that it's completely nuts and it's increasingly unacceptable. Who can we thank for this thinking? Well, we can thank this guy, and I tried to find the most kind of evil looking picture I could of him. He's probably a nice guy, or was a nice guy, but this is Milton Friedman, and his thinking really has pushed a lot of the thinking around what a corporation has responsibility for and what it ought to do with its resources and on behalf of shareholders. And one of his more famous quotes has been that there is one and only one responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game. That's it. There is a little bit more to it, but let's just digress for a second. Has anyone been to Bali? Cool. Did you learn to surf when you were there, or would you want to learn to surf? Because I can teach you how to surf. Like, that's something I can offer. Do you want to learn to surf now? So that's the plastic tide that happens in Bali when the trade winds change, and that brings all of this plastic back into shore from all the partying and good times that happened the night before. I'm sure the shareholders of the plastics companies who visit Bali often enough for their holidays are rethinking their interpretation of shareholder value. Is it enough to make money out of this, or is there something more that needs to be done? You're probably not so interested in that surfing lesson now either. The problem here is what's commonly referred to as environmental externalities. So they're things that aren't really taken into account when people think of what the company does. They create the product, and then whatever else happens outside of that isn't really their responsibility. This is a pretty graphic representation of that. But it happens in other industries. Fashion, we can talk about that. We can go to food, the environmental externalities of food. Transportation, there's plenty of reasons why transportation has the externalities that are obvious. And energy, which is probably the most obvious of all. So for a long time, this has been the definition of shareholder value and responsibility that's focused purely on the financial, and it's resulted in us inheriting a planet that is in peril from the negative effects of climate change, plastic pollution, but also a world that's grossly unequal, and the distribution of resources has seen a lot of people starving whilst others are stuffed. That's the reality that we live with today. So back to the quote. There is a second part of this quote though that I'd like to bring up, and that is the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. So the two quotes combined now look like this, and this is my really powerful graphic design skills being used here. There's only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits, so as long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. Do you think he's pondering the consequences of his thought bubbles? If he saw the plastic tide, you'd hope he would. Neither I or anyone else who I work with would disagree with the first part of this quote. I mean, a business has to make a profit. That is what we do. That's the point of it. But the responsibility can extend beyond that. And for me, I think it's these rules of the game which can actually be redefined as to how that business makes profit and what kind of limitations they want to put around themselves to get to that goal of profit and shareholder returns, financial returns. So does anyone know this guy? Oh, cool, one person knows this guy. Well, he's not my grandfather, although he would make a really cool uncle that I'd like to go and visit. That's Yvon Chouinard. He's the founder of Patagonia. He decided that he didn't really agree with that quote about the responsibility of a business. And he's built an outdoor and lifestyle brand that's neared $1 billion in sales in 2015. Here's a few more, a nice little clipping from him, from climber to billionaire. Yep, 750 million in sales in 2015. Sales grew 25% in the middle of the financial crisis. For a company that we all, I mean, whoever knows this company knows that it's not cheap. It's a high cost item and a garment that you're going to pay a lot of money for if you're going to buy it. They're also not afraid to use their platform to pick a fight in the US and be politically divisive, even with a brand that needs to sell to consumers. They're willing to take on that fight. That's from their front page of their website. And I do believe the majority of all of their sales happen through that website. So they're not afraid of speaking their mind, and much like Finlayson, picking some big fights. I think we all agree that this definition of success for a business can do with a long overdue overhaul. Another piece of art to guide our conversation here is, this one's called Follow the Leaders. It's by an artist called Isaac Cordal. Others have often referred to this as waiting for climate change. You get the point. I guess the question is if businesses kind of are locked in around some legal terms about what a business ought to do, because ultimately in a stock listed company, your goal has to be to provide shareholder returns. Otherwise, you're going to get kicked out or worse. So can the legal system be adjusted to expand the definition of what a publicly traded company needs to take responsibility for? Maybe, but I don't think we have time, and other political options don't seem to be much help either, with the US signing on to the Paris Agreement to limit CO2 emissions and then jumping out of it. And I just had to share that because I think that's the coolest piece of art done this year in terms of Trump. It's subtle, but also extremely powerful. So we could probably agree that politicians aren't going to be a huge help in seeing us, change the way that businesses work. There's not going to be a big stick from them to get the businesses moving. But I should say that not all political groups are useless. This is the Finnish Consul General of New York, that chap on the end there, and that's me in the middle, with a lady Lotta from Business Finland in the US, visiting a gas plant in New York only a couple of weeks ago that Eagle Filters is installed in. They've been really helpful for us as a company in terms of how we've been able to enter into the US market. And anyone looking at the US market and looking for help along the way, I can recommend the Finnish Consul General and Business Finland. They've done some good stuff for us at least, so get in touch with them and talk to them if you're entering the US. So the legal systems probably won't be enough, and they won't do it quick enough, and the politicians are too busy waiting for climate change. So what is it that all of us can do? We can wait for climate change ourselves. I clearly love this artist a little too much. Or, each and every one of us are going to have to step up, use the skills and resources that we have and the businesses and the vehicles we're creating to make that impact ourselves and redefine business and what it can do ourselves. So I've started off with a quote myself. See, I've always wanted to use this image, and I should contextualize it. A friend of mine was practicing her portrait photography and she was getting friends to sit in her garage and do some photos. So I agreed to sit down once, and I've never been able to use this image. So there is one and only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, make money, don't fuck the place up at the same time, and actually make the world a better place, fool. That's one way you could do it. That's my definition. It's not Loudspring's definition. Our one is save natural resources by growing company revenues, which is kind of a bit drier, but it's who we are. So that's how we do it with our companies. We've invested in them so that they can create the impact through our investment, and the idea is that shareholder value follows from the ability of those companies to make a positive impact. That's how we've done it. We've also recently, it's all good to say that you're doing impact, but we made a point in 2016 to measure that impact the best way we could and start to communicate that as well. Because in my experience now with Loudspring, there's a spectrum of shareholders that I have come across and who I've met, and some of them are, purely financially driven and who will, hold us to account on that pure financial success. There's others who are in this blurry middle ground where, of course, they want the financial success, and if things turn, which they have recently, anyone who follows our share, it's gone down quite a lot for a number of reasons, but they're good at holding us to account and feeling good about the environmental impact until the share price starts to go down, and then they suddenly become very, very concerned only with financial. And then there's others who are legitimately just wanting to put some money towards something that they believe is having a positive impact, and they're very patient with that investment, and they're willing to look at this as a long-term thing, which is the way you need to look at environmental change. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes years. It's something that, particularly with companies that are trying to enter markets, they have to, it takes time to win over these contracts and whatever to get their impact growing. So our impact results are something that we've taken seriously the last 2 years so that shareholders can understand that their investment does more than get a return financially. So you should all feel very privileged because this is now the official release of our impact results for 2017. Our CO2 savings were 160,000 tonnes CO2 equivalent, which is equivalent to taking 97,000 finished cars off the road, eliminating the CO2 emissions of 8,700 Finnish households. That's what our companies combined did last year. The water savings are quite incredible though, 7.8 million metres cubed of water saved. So that compensates the water consumption of 61,000 Swedish homes. And it's equivalent to over 500 million toilet flushes. I thought that was interesting. So that's our impact for 2017. What's really interesting about this, or you could call it an inconvenient truth about our impact last year, is that it's actually in relation to our revenues. So our revenue growth for 2017 was 77% from our combined portfolio, but our impact didn't increase at the same level. And the reason for that is because we got better at measuring our impact. We held ourselves to a higher accountability standard. We brought in new people to look at it and how we were measuring it and which studies we were using to measure our results. So it's, as a communications guy in the building, I mean, it kind of sucks when you can't talk about huge impacts and look what we did from this year to the next. But I think there's also a good, I kind of take a bit of pride in the fact that we're able to be open about the fact that we got better at doing something, because I think in business too many people want to see results all the time that look really good on charts and, you know, nice curves that everyone gets excited about. But I think the reality for everyone to accept is that this is a learning experience for everybody. Nobody's cracked the code of measuring impact perfectly. There's always new information that pops up. There's always new academics studying the impacts of everything. There's even startups that I've heard that are working on big ideas on this. And it's going to be a rocky road in terms of communicating about impact over time. So, in wrapping up, I thought it'd be nice to have another look at this absurd cartoon and kind of just remember that the future doesn't have to be like that. All of the tools we need are basically with us now. I mean, all of you in the room are working on lots of different things, as I understand now, in between saunas and beers. And I think that, I guess the question that I would leave with all of you is, you know, what's your own definition of responsibility in your business or your enterprise? And what are you going to do with your skills, ideas, and ambitions to make the world better while achieving the financial success you desire? Because you can have both. You can have both. You don't have to choose one or the other. I mean, I tried to find an image of us when I was going to talk about the team, and I was going to try and find an image of us sitting around a campfire playing guitar and talking about how we're going to change the world, because that's what people think you have to choose between is, you know, do I have to chain myself to a tree, or do I, you know, is that how I make an impact, or can I do what I like doing? Can I be a graphic designer with impact? You know, can I be a web developer with impact? And I do think you can, and I look forward to any questions around that, as well as yeah, anything else you'd like to talk about. So I think we'll go into the Q&A. Yeah, that's our kind of last little thing to leave you with, more corporate lines. So thank you for having me, and yeah. So, who's got a question?